Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola law firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we're going to be discussing intervention in the workplace, and our guest is Donna Marks, who's a psychologist and mental health counselor, also an addiction specialist, and she's an author and lecturer about these issues. Donna, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Circumstances does a lawyer or someone else need an intervention in their workplace?
That would be necessary whenever their addiction is impairing their work performance and putting their law firm at risk.
And this could be true for any. Let's say it could be true for a crane operator or someone, a subway operator, anyone who's doing something where their own life or other lives would be at risk. An airline pilot.
That's correct, and often people do put other people's lives at risk. They don't mean to. They don't. The addiction has taken hold of their mind, and they're no longer using their own mind to make the decisions, and it does put other people's lives at risk for sure.
And so this is designed to prevent a bigger problem to the person who's who's under stress and preventing a bigger problem to their employer, whether it's a law firm or some other entity.
Exactly. What commonly happens when people have a lot of responsibility, whether they're in the, high-end banking industry or financial industry or law firm or medicine, or as you so accurately pointed out, I think it's very difficult now for an airline pilot to be impaired when they're flying because there's so many restrictions and screening processes. But there's certainly flight attendants are a very high risk and have we do a lot of interventions with flight attendants. But yes, people who are impaired, they wind up making big mistakes. Some of them are fatal, but in most cases it's financial. In the law firm, a case is fouled up, deadlines aren't met. The person, if they have, an addiction with sex, they often get involved with the clients, not just one, but multiple clientele.
Or maybe personnel in the law office.
Oh yeah, it happens
or other strangers out there.
Yes. Or they're drinking on the job and they're trying to hide it. And in all these cases, usually the senior partners in the firm will ignore it or just say, we don't think this is a good fit, and we really like you. You're a great guy, but we just don't think you're the right fit for this law firm. And they're not addressing the actual issue, and often they're losing a very valuable employee.
And sometimes the person who's doing these things is the key player and the
correct, the
bedrock of that law firm, and people are afraid to say anything or do anything.
That's correct.
So let's take a step back, and not everyone is trained and knows what to look for. So what could be some common signs that this could be friends, family, colleagues in any business, but especially in law firms, should look for?
Right. So typical signs of someone who's has a substance abuse problem would be that, they're coming to work late on a consistent basis. Perhaps their hands are shaking because they're going through withdrawal. They may be emotionally distant and distracted. They could be, taking 2-3 hour lunches, and it's clear that they've had too much to drink. They go in their office and close the door and take a nap when they get back. The clients are complaining that they're, how come, my case isn't being, he's not returning my call, she's not showing up to the hearing today. This kind of thing are definite warning signs that something's going on.
And are they Are they absences from projects or, let's say, meetings or lunch or maybe networking or rainmaking is also not occurring as much as it's supposed to?
Or it's the wrong kind of networking. There's not anything really happening in the networking that's productive to the law firm. But the main thing that we see is that motions aren't filed in time, and the clients are being neglected. And that's also true with the sex addiction on the job.
And, of course, the legal matters that the clients come to the law firm to resolve or help with are being neglected. Correct.
Yes, which sets a firm up for malpractice, for bar complaints, and
bad PR as well.
Correct. The old saying, a satisfied client doesn't tell many people. A dissatisfied client tells everybody.
Now, and there's also the old saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So is
Correct.
That true here?
Absolutely. So
just tell us about the path to intervention or preventing, or doing the intervention to prevent this problem from going worse. Or nip it in the bud.
Absolutely. So it's never recommended that people who aren't trained in intervention do an intervention. You don't necessarily have to have a doctorate degree to do an intervention. There are people who are highly trained, and they're called interventionists. But many of us who are practicing psychotherapists and who do consulting and interventions with corporate structures, law firms, and things like that, we help as interventionists, we help the firm to understand the signs and symptoms. So often we'll be contacted. We think so-and-so has a problem. What do you see? They'll report the facts that they see. And these are only some of the facts that we've talked about so far, but maybe they're smelling alcohol on the person first thing in the morning, person's consistently late to work, the things that we talked about earlier. And then the clients aren't being properly served. So the interventionist will come to the firm and meet with the parties that are concerned. And it's very important that senior management is the fundamental part of that process because they're the ones that have the leverage. And so then as the interventionist meets with these people, he takes notes on what are the facts that they're concerned about that lead them to believe that this person has a problem. And then you talk about how to do an intervention, and you rehearse the intervention. So that would be a matter of everybody writing down their concerns. And one of the things that we really stress is that this does not come across as an attack. In my book, Learn, Grow, Forgive, it's all about helping people to break patterns, but by choosing from the place of caring and concern and love and not attack and guilt and shame.
And you're not trying to destroy them or make a bad situation worse. You're trying to keep it from growing worse and making it better for that person and everyone else and the firm.
The desired goal is a win-win scenario. And so we want the person to be inspired, not shamed into making a decision. So when everyone gathers their facts, and we practice doing what I call the carefrontation, not a confrontation. And unbeknownst to the person who's being intervened upon, a meeting is set up. She thinks she's just walking into a meeting with the partners or the lawyers or whoever. And then the interventionist is there, and the interventionist explains that there's some things that the people here are very concerned about, and they let the person know that this is an intervention to help you to make a better decision. And then everyone reads their notes or their letters of concern. And in that, in each person's concern, they also have an alternative. We would like you to go get help. Depending on how severe the addiction is, mainly we want you to get evaluated to see what kind of help you need. But in most cases, when it's gone to the point that all the partners or people in the firm are complaining, clients are complaining, this person generally will need treatment in a residential facility, but not always. Sometimes AA is enough. There's also, I don't know about in New York, but in Florida here we have a program through the bar that supervises lawyers and makes sure they stay on track, and their license is contingent upon them, getting help and staying on track. Same thing with physicians and paired physicians programs and nursing and all of that. But the person is encouraged to get the full evaluation, to have whatever treatments recommended. If the interventionist sees that there's signs of advanced addiction and they know they're going to need treatment, they'll take them directly to the treatment center. But the person's given the choice, and the firm has a lot of leverage because that person does not want to lose their job. So they're told, we want you to get the help. If you get the help, we have good insurance here. We will give you the time off. We will support you, but you have to get the help because we cannot put the client's first and foremost cases at risk and their well-being, and we can't put the firm at risk.
And that person's only going to sink further into the rat hole or sinkhole. Now,
correct. And they almost always agree to get the help. And then we also encourage the family of the person to get involved because the family system often undermines the recovery process. There's an underlying unconscious threat by the spouse often, or the partner, or sometimes even the children. If the person changes, they won't want me anymore, so I like them drunk and unconscious. So it's important that, the family get involved too as part of the treatment process, but that has really nothing to do with the firm other than the firm's understanding that and supporting that.
And I was going to ask you, when you mentioned about the intervention, would you invite a colleague? Would you invite an outside friend or relative or spouse or parent or child to it as well, or not before?
That depends on, that would be evaluated. If the person would be supportive and not sabotage it, often a spouse or a friend will sabotage it and warn the person that there's going to be an intervention. And that is never a good idea because then it diffuses everything. And sometimes the person will just run scared, or they'll just show up and say, oh, guess what? I'm not drinking anymore, and then just get more sneaky about their addiction.
So are they going to freak out when this occurs?
They usually don't freak out because it's done in a supportive way. Often they will cry, and they will be very frightened and sad, but normally they don't freak out.
Okay, and that's the beginning of the rehabilitation process,
of the healing
or the growth process.
Yes, the denial has started. At that point, the denial is broken. Anybody with an addiction knows down deep they have a problem. So really the whole process of the intervention is to shine light on that, not shame, but light on that. And here's a way out of the maze that you're stuck in. And everybody down deep knows that they're stuck in that maze.
And I noticed you mentioned earlier about the leverage that the firm may have. Are there any other components of that leverage?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
You decide on the leverage, and when you meet with the intervention participants, what kind of leverage does everyone have to?
Well, the leverage is we would like you to do this. If you don't, then we're going to have to let you go.
But you'd also emphasize the positive consequences.
Absolutely.
We'll keep your job. We'll get you treatment. The insurance
Right.
will cover it. This is treatable. There is help available.
Yes, and it's all lined up for you. It's all ready for you. All you have to do is be willing to get the help. Absolutely. And there's so many wonderful stories. There's some very well-known attorneys in the country. They don't talk about it, but they have. There's a lot of people in recovery, and everything gets better. They're not drinking, they're not distracted, or they're not they're not doing the sex addiction. They're actually getting the help that they need and the support that they need, and then they start feeling better. They feel good about themselves. They have the energy required to do their job, and often these people are super employees. They're very bright, they're very capable, and they work hard
because they have this burden lifted off their shoulders.
Absolutely.
Or whatever is adversely affecting their productivity. And when you're giving alcohol as one example, but other this could be someone who's under a tremendous amount of stress, or overcome by anxiety or depression.
Yes. Well, often I call anxiety fear. Very rarely is it actually a chemical cause for anxiety. So I call it fear. And then I help people to understand, I'm not anxious about this. I'm scared blank will happen. So I help people to deal with that on that level and learn how to choose the more loving choice instead of the fear-based choice. But there's also, lots of other ways to lead out of that place into a more positive place.
Okay, and we have to take a short break. When we return, we'll discover what some other ways are and also talk more about the intervention. We've been talking with Dr. Donna Marks, a psychotherapist and psychoanalyst, who has also written some books. We'll hear more about them in the second half of the show. You're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and also over the internet and through our podcast at nccradio.org. We'll be back in a moment.
This portion of programming on WHPC is brought to you on behalf of the Nassau County Bar Association, helping both the public and lawyers since 1899. They are the largest suburban bar association in the country. The Nassau County Bar Association offers clinics where you can meet privately with an attorney to prevent or solve legal problems involving Hurricane Sandy, foreclosure, wills, or elder law. Speakers on almost any legal topic are also available to schools or community groups. They can also help lawyers advance their legal careers and offer a place to network. Learn more about the Nassau County Bar Association by calling 516-747-4070 or visit nassaubar.org.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denise, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know. We're talking about the law firm intervention, which might be necessary for any kind of workplace, but it also could be necessary in a law firm where a colleague or senior partner or associate is having problems with some form of addiction. Donna, before we go back to the intervention, just tell us about your recent book.
Oh, it's called Learn, Grow, Forgive, and it provides a way for people to get out of the maze and the pattern that they're stuck in. And not everybody realizes they have an addiction. I do this a lot, but, I'm not addicted. And then they try and, then they'll stop for a while, and then they go back, and it's worse when they go back than before. Or they stop doing one thing, and then they start doing something else. It's real common, like for an alcoholic to, get into gambling or sex addiction or spending or workaholic. So the premise of my book is that early on something happened. There was some type of trauma. It could be, something mild, or it could be something severe. Mild could just be your father told you weren't, cutting it in some way, or, maybe you had a death of a beloved family member that never got addressed. These are all very serious, but when you compare that to someone who might have been, raped as a child or in sexual abuse or raised in a violent alcoholic family, it's a continuum. But regardless of what the trauma was, that child didn't heal from it. It wasn't properly addressed and talked about, and the support wasn't there for that to heal. And I outline all this in the book. It could be an attachment problem with a parent, or it could be abuse, it could be neglect, it could be abandonment, it could be a variety of things. And that child that's born to feel perfectly okay and to be perfectly loved and come here to have fun and play and have a good time gets traumatized and gets stuck in that pain. And they grow up feeling, I'm not okay, the world's not okay, and the first time that they self-medicate, whatever form that takes, they feel okay in that moment. Of course, like any addiction, after that high is over, then there's shame and guilt and emptiness. So my book talks about understanding what happened in that initial trauma, and that's the learn part. And then the grow part is about mourning that process, mourning the feelings that have been stuck inside, and actually healing. And then the third part is the forgiveness, which is a natural result of doing the internal work.
And can some of these situations have developed in the law firm or the workplace, or they have been lingering for much longer than that?
Yeah, I think that we reenact our childhood traumas unconsciously, and that's what I believe, and that's pretty much been established through years of people studying behavior. We don't always realize that we're reenacting it, but yes, that the victim of an alcoholic becomes a perpetrator as an adult, or remains a victim of an alcoholic. A child of an alcoholic marries an alcoholic or becomes one, is a better way of putting it. It takes a lot of courage to face that pain, to face my perfect family. Oh my goodness, it wasn't so perfect after all. And to do that, though, without blaming parents. There's no healing power in blaming anybody. But we do want to understand what happened. What happened? What was the initial cause here under the addictive behavior?
This may be your personal history, but it doesn't have to be your final chapter.
Correct. For myself, I was raised in an alcoholic family. There was a lot of abuse, and by the time I was 18, I was a single mom, high school dropout, and I started engaging in my own addictions. But something inside of me said, you can do better. You can do better than this. So I worked my way out of all of that and got a lot of help over the years, and now I have my doctorate degree. I'm working with thousands of people over the years, helping them to heal, and I learned through that process what works, what doesn't work. I learned the difference between a good healer and someone who was unhealed themselves. I learned about spirituality. I went all over the world, studied all the major religions, and I have all that's kind of condensed in the book to provide a total
and what
healing
people
process.
may not realize, especially at their low point, is everyone or many people have some kind of history, and
yes,
many people have worked around it to some degree.
Correct. There's like over 100 million people just in the U.S. alone who are addicted to all kinds of things. So, yes, and we don't realize it. We manage, like you said, we work around it until we can't anymore. Until we get caught, or until it brings us down, like the addiction, there's no more money, there's no more friends, there's no place to live, and there's nothing left of the human being. It's just becomes like a heap of pain, and at that point the person can get help. But the nice thing about the intervention, it doesn't have to go to that point.
And I do want to mention, both for the employer, for the colleague, or even the person who may think this applies to them, that most bar associations have a social worker on call to at least start the process. Mm-hmm. Many larger firms have their own professionals to provide assistance, and almost every bar association has a committee of lawyers and others who will provide help to the person who needs some kind of help and guidance.
Correct.
And they should just reach out to them. And very recently, in the past few months, many lawyers have, come out and admitted their dark past or their dark present, and how they are battling something, or how they've overcome the battle. And these were topics that people didn't talk about, especially lawyers.
And that's the beauty of learn, grow, forgive mentality, is that there's no more shame. This person got caught up in a pattern they didn't realize at all. There was a part of them that knew it was wrong, but many times it wasn't wrong initially to have a drink or to, do something experimental, and it became wrong over time. But once that, it's kind of like you see the radar, locking in on the target. Once that addiction has locked in on the mind and kidnaps the person's mind, then they are no longer free to choose. And they're in the maze, and they cannot get out by themselves.
Donna, we just have a moment or two left in the show. Anything you want to reiterate for the people running a workplace, for the colleagues, for the person who may realize that the person next cubicle, the next office has these problems, for the client or for their family or friends?
I would just like to reiterate what we were just talking about, that, to approach this from a place that this can be a very positive experience, an experience of growth, an experience of personal reformation and freedom from the bondage of whatever the addiction is, and that, the person's life can be restored to what it was supposed to be, a birth, to come here and be productive, have a good time, play, learn, have friends, and enjoy the beauty of the world, and not be locked in on the insanity insanity and the sorrow. And it's a new beginning, and when we approach it from a very positive place and the strengths of the person and not this one weakness or few weaknesses, whatever's going on, it can be a wonderful, enlightening experience.
And no matter how much the person feels entrapped or how desperate the situation may seem, there is a path out.
Correct.
And just mention your website or your book again where our listeners can get further information.
So my website is drdonnamarks.com, and the book is Learn, Grow, Forgive.
Okay.
And it's available on Amazon, Balboa, and Barnes & Noble.
And do you also, and just in a moment, do you conduct training or interventions for law firms on how to become aware of and prevent and minimize these problems?
I can do consulting. It doesn't require a major training, but I can do consulting. We also do presentations through different organizations that are open to law firms and financial firms and things like that who want to learn more about the signs and symptoms and how to address it. So those resources are available in just about every community, but yes, I offer them as well.
And as you mentioned in the beginning, not all kinds of higher stress occupations, but there's a greater recognition of the need to provide help and resources, and they are out there.
Absolutely. A grocery store person showing up impaired is not going to have that much effect on the customers and all, but a physician, a lawyer, like someone who's got people's lives in their hands is definitely creating more risk for their workforce and for their employer. So it's really critical to address these issues. But again, from the place of being positive.
And it might be a peer who's been through this that can help bring someone back, help them begin the journey.
Peer support is critical, yes. Absolutely.
So I just want to remind lawyers that every bar association has a Lawyers in Need committee. Many of them have social workers on call to provide other resources, and there are many stories out there about people talking about their journey back, how they were part of an intervention and how they came back from the brink. I'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Donna Marks, and invite our listeners to miss any part of this broadcast. It's available as a podcast at nccradio.org. And to join us next week at the same time for another program on Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and also over the internet at nccradio.org.